And there is a real confusion of the way in which you speak, the way in which you look. I mean, if you could see the face, you would see that the face is under enormous pressure, to the point that it can end up twitching, because it's very different. We go through these incredible role shifts, and all of us are deeply familiar with it because all of us are semi-professional face readers, aren't we? I mean, we do it all the time. We look at somebody's face and we read it, or we try to read it. Many people are very good at reading it. Many people are very good at displaying it. And to really understand that it's not about there's only one. This is the thing. Yes, you're going to have those situations where somebody, for example, is a sphinx. And they're going to have a sun birth 713. You're going to have people who are very, very focused in a certain aspect of their role. But for most of us, that's not the case. For most of us, we have a balance, a mix inside of us of these 6 different roles that make up our being. And how important it is for us to exalt in their difference. And it's difficult to get there. It is, because of course it demands that you are correct in your nature. Because there is no other way really to control that, because it's so easy. There's so many tendencies within us. Open centers, not self strategies that'll say, well, look, why don't you stay with being the authoritarian? It works. Try that in bed. That kind of stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. And then you end up in situations where, you try to spend your whole life living out the role that you get out of the 59th gate, only to discover that, it doesn't work for you in any of those other aspects. The beauty is to surrender to the multi-dimension of what we are, and for you to recognize it, for you to begin to see the shifting, and to begin to see the shifting in the other. You see, we do have the capacity to actually see in another person's face the shifting of the role. I mean, you can see it. You simply have to know the face. But we are trained at the deepest level. Our brains and we pay so much attention to faces. It's unbelievable how much attention the brain pays to analyzing a face. It's one of the most interesting things about, I don't mean to sidebar, but it's a worthy one. One of the most interesting things about raped children, the mutation has brought about the dilemma of both prostate cancer and autism. And one of the things about autism is an enormous difficulty in autistic children to read facial signs. In other words, again, their difficulty lies in the 1948 channel, and of course this is the connection with the mammal. And they have the same dilemma. In other words, they really do not have the ability to be able to read faces, and so it's very confusing for them, because so much of human communication is facial. So much communication is facial. And for them, it's very difficult. They can't tell, for example, if somebody's got an angry face or a happy face. It's very, very difficult for them to see the nuances, to be able to distinguish those things. And it leads one to speculate on the fact that because of the way in which the rave is going to operate as a penta, that they probably will have a very flat facial expression, which may add to dilemmas for them when they start coming into the world as being diagnosed as having real problems, because they are not going to have they're not going to have this externalized a nuance in the face. The face muscles will be very flat. So it's just interesting to speculate how different they will be and how difficult it will be for us to read them. In the same way that, it's like trying to read the expression on your dog's face. It's a kind of guessing game, because it doesn't really work. We don't have that, we're not trained for that in terms of, when I say trained, just the way in which we are genetically determined in that sense. So one of the things that I really want you to to watch in that sense is in the beings around you, the ones where you know their design and you know their profile. Watch their faces. Begin to pay attention to the fact that you're being given a window in that sense to the various aspects of their roles, and you're going to be able to see them through that analysis. In other words, it can provide you with a very powerful insight into their nature, and obviously that can be advantage in terms of being able to help them or work with them. Okay, so let's take the example of the second line of the 13, the internalization. You're taking somebody in through a barrier system, because that's what the bigot is. And it's also interesting, for example, that limiting who will access you doesn't mean you're a bigot in terms of the way you externalize. As a matter of fact, you externalize as a Democrat. The very person that you would not take in is the same person that you could actually give outer authority to. And that's really something to think about. This is just about the way you take them in. And of course, this is something that's very important as a deep understanding of the second line by its very nature. The second line's about barriers. Excuse me. Second line's about barriers. The bigot. Hold on. These two didn't even have to hear that one. Okay. The thing about being second line is how essential it is to have barriers. Not everybody is of value to you. Only those that can truly call you. And there's only certain kinds that can call you. And there's only certain people that you can be receptive to. And for the second line, this is deeply significant. But it doesn't mean because you get a phone call from somebody and you immediately have the reaction of, oh God, I don't want to see them. It doesn't mean that when you're out in the world and you bump into them, that it can't be a pleasant experience. In other words, it's very different. It's very different. But taking them in, you don't want to take in the deep impact they can have on you. All second line beings are very open to being impacted. They're very open to being called to what is, what can be a drive for the rest of their life. And they need to be very clear that, there are those barriers in place. But again, that doesn't mean the barriers have to be someplace else. There is no barrier in that sense in the second line of externalization. There isn't. There is simply a way to avoid in that sense by saying, all right, I voted for you, you go do it and leave me alone. When we come to the third line and we come to the pessimist, again, the third line is not allowed to ever think that everything's okay. I mean, for the third line, it can never be this way. Never. And there is nothing more important to them when they are taking in the outside world than to take in the outside world with a deep pessimism. This is in their nature, and it's essential for them. The other thing is that this pessimism is one of the healthiest things for a third line being. It is healthier than just about anything that the third line being possesses as an attribute in its nature. And the reason for that is that if the pessimism is exalted, in other words, if it's simply surrendered to and accepted in terms of the way in which one takes in the outside world, then it doesn't set one up for a fall in the disappointment that love doesn't work, or careers don't work, or this doesn't work, or that doesn't work. There is this very clear, I didn't think it was going to work, and it's not about, I have a problem. It is simply about being pessimistic about life's possibilities. And being pessimistic about life's possibilities is the way in which the third line being takes the other in, takes them in. This is not about externalizing. When we move upward and we move into the upper trigram, we really change the feel entirely. You know, because the upper trigram is the transpersonal. It's all about the transpersonal. And here you're dealing with the most transpersonal of circuitry and dealing with the collective. You know, this essential need to socially share with others, to, you know, share the past, to share the possibilities of the future. And here you have transpersonal lines in this most transpersonal of environment. And here on the left-hand side in the externalization of this, so that you can imagine that fourth, fifth, and sixth themes here, they strongly